Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show. Not just any Daily AI Show, episode 599. Tomorrow is episode 600. So amazing to think we've gotten that far. Today is November 20th, 2025. With me today is Andy, and I'm Brian. And I think we're at Andy. I think we're holding down the fort today. And in fact, I'll be out tomorrow. I won't be able to be on the show. So I'm going to miss episode 600. But it's not lost on me, especially as we're talking about all these like major last couple of week changes and stuff. Just how much has changed in the way and what we've talked about and stuff. So it's fun to think that we have these little time capsules 5 days a week that allow us to basically, and kudos to Anne, by the way, who brought this up months ago. And she said, oh, the thing with the Daily AI Show is you guys are creating like mini points in time, so that at any point, if you want to know what was going on or around or what was in the zeitgeist as far as AI, you can literally go back to a date on one of our shows and like that's what was going on at that time. We were talking about custom GPTs, or we were talking about God mode or something weird, And although we talk about deep research and all that stuff that's sort of evergreen, I do love that idea that we've built this sort of fun time capsule, if you will.
It's an historical archive.
I like
shows
that
the progression of AI, from the viewpoint of people who are, frankly, daily involved in it, not just on the show, but that's our métier. We work in AI.
Well, I love that you called it an archive, which now means I'm going to start the petition process for what would be Library of Congress. I feel like
we should be in the Library of Congress for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we should. We're like, what do they call it with Star Wars? Like official canon. We're official canon for AI.
Yeah, and you know what? We're already in the library of YouTube. So and that's a major archive for the world at this point again.
Justin says the DOS Wayback Machine. Yeah, pretty much. By the way, What a great website. I used that many times. To look back, if you just want to if anybody's never used the Wayback Machine, it's a cool website that takes timestamps of all over the internet. And if you want to see what Amazon's homepage looked like, I don't know how far back it goes or whatever, you can see like really fun design.
Into the 90s. It goes into the 90s.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And so you could just see some really rinky-dink Amazon buy a book here, and then see how it's progressed, So anyway, That's not news. That's not neither here or there. Just kind of kicking off things today, Andy. And since it is just you and I will just say thank you for being on this journey for 599 episodes. Because this has always been a highlight of my day. So just appreciate you very much, as well as everybody else.
And vice versa. We are going to have done 600 shows. And I remember all the way back to the very earliest days, Karl was saying, look, we don't really know what's going to happen. We won't know until 100 shows in. And now that's 6x that. And we still don't know. We're still just, but the reality is that we're just doing it every day and creating this incredible longitudinal archive of the subjects that were of interest in the world of AI. And there's a way ultimately to digest all that and represent it in some kind of timeline fashion. And that'll be one of our side projects, I'm sure, ultimately.
Sounds like a perfect build for maybe a gem or using Gemini 3. And that's certainly been a big topic of this week, which is a nice pivot to say, hey, I bet you there's some other stuff going on in AI. So Andy, what is
so yesterday I mentioned that, yesterday, at the close of markets, then NVIDIA was going to be doing their third quarter earnings call basically and releasing the results of their third quarter. And there was great concern about whether that would, weigh down the market for AI and just, create concerns, or whether it would be, a really satisfying result. Well, the terms are superlative. NVIDIA was said to have crushed the results. Specifically, they hit a record $57 billion in their most recent quarter, up 62% from the prior year. So that was enough to bump their stock up by 6% in the aftermarket trading And NVIDIA estimates that their current quarter will exceed that significantly by another $8 billion, right on top of the $57 billion per quarter mark that they've struck. And there's a bunch of other news about, major investments globally in data center development that I'll talk about in a moment. But I wanted to jump over to the other subject that we talked about at length yesterday, which is Gemini 3, and how it just seemed so impressive that it had, just leapt to a state-of-the-art level that we didn't expect would surpass the others so significantly and clearly across most major benchmarks. One area that it was lagging in a little bit, however, didn't really blow Sonnet 4.5 and from Claude in the coding realm, didn't blow it out of the water. It really made incredible advances in other measurements like the ARC AGI2 reasoning test, which is basically the measurement toward the ultimate objective of artificial general intelligence. It really blew everybody out of the water. I mean, it jumped, but to like double the performance of any prior state-of-the-art performance by any model. So it's really, really out there. But just today, we see news that OpenAI released their GPT 5.1 Codex Max. That's their coding platform. And it's an upgrade to its agentic coding system that uses a brand new technique that I want to talk about briefly here, which is compaction across context windows. So, Gemini's always had, for coding purposes, this enormous context window, 1 million, up to 2 million tokens of context that it retains and manages to understand and not lose track of in the course of your conversations with Gemini. Well, they have now OpenAI's developed a new and more efficient approach to that called compaction, which basically takes the prior context block that it was working with and then compresses it. It compacts it into the essentials that need to be understood and passes that smaller payload over to the next context window. And so in that progression, it allows Codex Max to proceed through up to 24 hours of reasoning by passing this context forward, when other models with lesser capabilities in respective context windows would basically flummox themselves by trying to proceed that far. They would just lose their context, lose recollection of what's going on. But Codex Max does this in a tremendously efficient way, maybe even more efficient than Gemini 3 is doing this. And of course, now Google researchers will figure out how to do the same kind of process to do it. But I think that's a really important thing. It shows incredible improvements over development benchmarks, surpassing Gemini 3 Pro in coding tasks just a day after Gemini 3 Pro came out. Okay, it uses 30% fewer tokens than its predecessor while running significantly faster on real-world tasks through that improved reasoning efficiency that it has, plus this compaction technique. It prunes the prior session history while preserving the context, allowing it to then go across many millions of tokens while keeping this sort of packaged payload of context moving forward across those multi-millions of context.
Yeah, I love this idea of how they're working around the idea, any of these major players, around memory, and how they're chopping it up and finding new novel ways to kind of use the current architecture, which is somewhat limited, in terms of what it can do. Yes, context windows growing is a big deal, but you just pointed out some really interesting ways that Codex is doing it. Gemini, at least I've seen it, what it'll do in some cases is it will go and do research. In one case, okay, so an example is I built one and it had to fill out 144 rows on a Google spreadsheet of new research. Literally every row on there needed some sort of validation check, right? So it's a massive take. And obviously, even Gemini 3 was struggling, on and on and on. Eventually, I got it to break down into bite-sized pieces. But what it does in this particular case is it will take a chunk that's got like a header with a couple of different rows underneath, like 5-6 rows. It will do that research. And something I have not seen somewhere else yet is it will write a bit of Python script. Never reveal or show that to the user. I'm sure in the thinking you'd see it, but you're not seeing it like, visually as the user. It holds that new Python script, does all of its other processes, and then says, okay, I need to build a Google sheet from all the Python results, which is a nice, easy, novel way of solving for memory or large tasks. 144 rows would be absurd to think that you could do that. But I was able to, produce really quality results across a massive spreadsheet. In this particular case, they were building battle cards against competitors. So it was a lot of like, what do they have? What do they don't have? Along with reasoning and citation. So I don't know. I like all of this. I'm like for all of it because it just means that we're going to be able to do more complex things without losing those core thoughts.
Right. So let me just harken back to something that I showed on this show that I was doing with Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro in AI Studio, and I was using it, as you know, as a coding assistant while working in Lovable with Claude 4.5, right? But I didn't, if I was not satisfied for whatever reasons with what Claude was doing, I would go over to Gemini and I would maintain context because I had this million context window. And in the playground, it shows you how far you've gone towards the million tokens. And you can see as you're going on, I'm pasting huge blocks of code in, and I'm adding all of the discussion that's going on with the coding agent, in Lovable into the window. And I'm saying, now, tell me what to do next. Give me instructions. And it's working its way steadily towards 1 million tokens. And by the way, as you get like the 750,000, 800,000 tokens accumulated in that context window, Gemini 2.5 Pro slowed down.
Oh, sure.
So it would be very slow in responding then, whereas before it was really crisp. So what I would do is I would say, okay, look, I'm going to start a new chat. So I want you to look at this entire window, and I want you then to compress that into some instructions for yourself. I'm going to give this to you, to the next coding assistant, as the context that we've developed in this chat. So I think actually I invented compaction. I don't know how I get credit for that, but I had already done it.
You say it on the show. I mean, clearly you say it on the
show. The proof is there. We can go back and check it out.
Yeah. I get it. You say it on this show, you say it early enough, and I think it should be attributed to us, whether it was obvious it was coming or not. Hey, by the way, Karl joined us a little while ago. Hey, Karl, how are you? That just
you're mute.
Yeah.
What's going on? We're still on the news, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we kind of are. Yeah. But although Andy and I have high hopes of wrapping this show up sub 1 hour, so we're going to keep moving.
Well, we're only at 13 minutes. Okay. So,
are you wrapping it up already? I'm like, having this show
that would be something else.
Yeah.
No. All we did was we kicked up. I was saying very briefly, not to get back into it, very briefly, that I won't be here tomorrow, so I'm going to miss show 600. But this is show 599. I was just saying to Andy, but also obviously to you and everybody else, just how much I appreciate you guys being along, like our crew here being along for this ride over 600 episodes. So, and I was just saying, like Andy was saying it too, like, this is a time capsule. This is actually an archive, this show, that allows us to go back at any point in time over the last 2.5 years and see what was going on in the world of AI, which I think probably has long-standing benefits that we're probably not even really thinking about today, which is like super cool to think about us being part of adding to this AI archive of history, So just that was it on that part. I do have two quick news stories, and then Karl, if you have a news story, whatever, we can jump into those. One of them is, let me get back over to it. So Prime Video Prime Video's new recap feature aims to be your best friend for catching up. Need to visit a past show of a past season of a show? This AI powered feature can help you do it. This I thought was a novel use of AI. Now I'm sure there's going to be blowback, and people are saying it's because it's in the movie or show or entertainment industry. But what it appears to be is that we know this now. You might wait 3 years before the next season of some 8-part season is out on one of these platforms, Stranger Things. And even if it was last year, my wife and I are usually like, we got to watch the recap, but you don't always have those available. So this idea that they're just using AI, and the example they give on the screen is that show Jack Ryan, then you can just use this AI recap. But I think this is part of a larger just AI discussion about Prime Video. For a while now, they've had their X-ray view, which means that you can, like, at any point when you're watching it, you can bring up the actors or actresses that are in any particular scene, which is super cool because you see somebody come on screen, you're like, I've seen them before. Where do I know them from? And so you get a bit of that like knowledge. The other place I've seen this is with the NFL on Thursday Night Football, which is exclusively on Prime. And you can watch the normal feed, but you can now watch this other, feels like a video game feed, because you're always sitting behind the quarterback and you have that view versus the side-by-side typical NFL view. And it has stats in it and next gen type stuff or whatever. And it's all AI enhanced. And they do it with a lot of other cameras. It's very high tech. And I think, like most things, like this will begin to eke out more and more. In fact, you'll even see the announcers like Kirk Herbstreit or whatever kick to that viewpoint and then come back. And so it's just a bigger question of how Prime, aka Amazon, but specifically Prime, which I'm sure is its own company and hierarchy of people there, are using AI in novel ways to enhance the user experience without overtly coming over the top and like replacing or making it hard. It's just like little things like, oh, that's nice. I appreciate having that AI summary. Oh, that's nice. I like the X-ray vision. Oh, that's nice. I like to be able to see the stats and what the quarterback was thinking in his coverage from this viewpoint. That's all I got. It's like news, but it's just like they keep doing things like this. And I think, yeah, I like where they're going with this. I like these use cases. And then the other one I was going to share really quick was our friends at Perplexity revamped their AI shopping experience just in time for Black Friday. So I'll be honest, I have not used the shopping experience. I've never bought anything off of ChatGPT at this point or Perplexity. I know you can. I just have not. So doesn't surprise me that they're trying to make sure that the user experience in Perplexity is top notch, especially as they're getting into a busy shopping season and stuff. By the way, I like the idea of using Perplexity. I just don't. I would have to like think about what it is that I would try to buy that it would be valuable to me, because I don't think it's across the board. I think if you're buying a new washer or dryer or fridge, I could see real value there as it looks at different models and helps you better compare and contrast. But would I buy a fridge off of Perplexity? I don't.
Well, I challenge that, because there's often a product category or product that I'm looking for that I don't really know what the range of possible alternatives are. And I want an AI agent basically to look at all the alternatives, all the sources, like different locations I can buy it, and find the highest rated and the best priced, best value options for me, and give me 3 and provide me with a link that I can go to buy it at. Well, long ago, like almost a year ago, Perplexity offered the ability to actually purchase on Perplexity, but it didn't really work very well. But that was very early. And I'm sure what they've done is they've gone back behind the scenes and they've fixed a lot of the friction that was in that process. And I would definitely do a product search, which is where I start out, like, okay, I need one of these, but I'm open to different brands, and I'm open to, different sources for that, different retail, online or local, to get it. And Perplexity can do that search for me. Also can many other agents. Like I use GenSpark, and GenSpark will do a similar kind of thing, but won't conclude the purchase. The conclusion of the purchase, whether now on Gemini, which has the, not only buy it using Google Pay, but also, oh, let me call local retailers to just make sure that it is there for you, and then I'll give you a summary about that. You can see where we're going. And I want to follow on that with this bit of news that I think everybody should pay attention to. We haven't talked about it yet, but there's a new name in the world of the pantheon of the AI leaders, and it's at OpenAI, and her name is Fiji Simo. So we haven't mentioned that name on this show, I don't think. No. So Fiji Simo is the OpenAI CEO of applications. So Sam Altman is the CEO, chief executive of the entire company, but he only manages research and compute. Fiji Simo does everything else. And her focus is on developing consumer-facing applications for the products that come out of research, tying those together in a way that'll make money for OpenAI. So let me tell you a little bit about Fiji. So she was running the Facebook app at Meta. That's what one of her prior roles was. And then she became the CEO of Instacart in 2021, in the midst of the COVID situation, where Instacart became a very important player. Yeah. And she took that grocery startup public 2 years later. And so in the Valley, in Silicon Valley, she's considered a product visionary, and which has a reputation for scaling these things. And I'm taking most of this from a really excellent article about her, with interviews with her in Wired. So if you want to go check out this article in Wired, I suggest you read it, because it's a very interesting thing about her. She's French, a native of Sète, a small fishing town in the south of France. And so anyway, her mission is to turn the company's research breakthroughs into money-making, must-have consumer products, including shopping search. Okay. Yeah. And by the way, she's up against some big competition with Google and Meta, which is going to use the Facebook and Instagram platforms for their shopping support. And now a whole bunch of players who left OpenAI, who are doing some other things along, like OpenAI was the font of people who left and formed Perplexity. Or no, not Perplexity. Was it Perplexity? No. Anthropic, Periodic Labs, Thinking Machines, etc. Anyway, she says, here's a quote from that Wired article. She says, "The thing that keeps me up at night is that the intelligence of our models is far beyond how people are using them." And so I see my job as closing that gap. So she's going to make it easier and easier for us to take advantage of the intelligence. And so remember that name, Fiji Simo. She's now the head of all of the money-making aspects, not the money-spending aspects that Sam Altman's so good at, but the money-making aspects of OpenAI. And so anyway, Fiji Simo.
The only thing I would have follow up there is I expected you to maybe mention his name was Johnny Ives, because that's a physical product, so maybe that doesn't fall in the same.
And it's a separate division. I don't know that it's under Fiji, but it might be.
Yeah, certainly, I'm sure part of it. And the other thing that came to mind too is maybe not Instacart, because I don't know how Instacart sells data. But Facebook certainly does. Facebook is famously free because you pay through, your data and privacy and things like that. So I do wonder how that trickles in. But yeah, talk about a pedigree, or like job background to it of what she's done. I mean, clearly sounds like that's the kind of person, especially with the Instacart and bringing it public in 2 years. I mean, obviously that had to be insane growth. So if you're talking about somebody who understands pressure cooker situations and getting caught in a moment like COVID with a product like Instacart that was going to go through the roof, like we watched those companies, the Zooms of the world and stuff like that. They either faltered because they could not deal with demand and where things were going, or they excelled. So somebody that made it through that and came out with an IPO, you got to think, hey, she's not going to flinch. She's been here before.
Oh, okay, one thing I want to add too is I was listening to A16Z as an interesting tidbit too. Obviously, the thing that's there's a reason why OpenAI wants to invest in Stargate, or like the partnership with Oracle and NVIDIA, is they need the compute, right? Because they have like all the, I'm thinking more the inference cost of everyone doing searches or whatever it is, right? And he was mentioning that, because I think the question was around like, do you have enough compute or something like that? He said a majority of the compute actually goes into the research. And if they had to choose research or product, it would go to research first, then go to product, which is, if you think about like the interesting part of that, is that's why maybe the products you get, if they, let's say if they move the compute, they reversed it, right? The majority of the compute goes to product, then maybe you get, like he said in a previous one before, he's like, we can't even show you some of the models because there's no way you would be able to run it because we don't have the compute to run it, right? And I think that's probably true for a lot of companies. I'm about to swear because the amount of rate limiting I get from even Gemini and Anthropic is outrageous that I have to go into the IDE and Claude Code because it doesn't rate limit me as much as the web apps. It's so frustrating. And that's why it's hard for me to recommend products like Claude and Gemini at the moment, because imagine you're just, you're not in the AI space and it's like the notice and you're like, what? Like why can't I continue going? Because
come back in 2 hours.
What business runs like that? So, but it's interesting though, right? Because like that leads to what Jan LeCun was, why he left Meta, right? He's like, hey, look, I want to do research. Product's cool, but like I'm in it for the decades, not giving you ability to vibe code. That's not his deal. Like he doesn't want to do that. He wants to, go more with fair. So it's just neat to see there's two different angles, right? There's the research side, and then there is definitely the product side. And I know everyone's looking at the product side, but it's like, how long did it take to get all the products, but the research in the back end to get into it? And I think that's key, is what Jan is doing, what some like Ilya is probably doing. We don't hear about it, and maybe we'll never hear about it, but the products that will come out of that is going to be fantastic. But they will probably, maybe you're not even getting to get the credit, right? It's going to be, whether it's Sam Altman, whether it's Sundar Pichai, whether it's a new company that comes up with whatever product we're using, the background research was never, it's like, how often is Jeffrey Hinton brought up? He's brought up, but like, how often is he brought up in the conversation about what the stuff we're using? Very little, right? But like, dude was like a big part of that initial movement, right? So yeah.
It's it's funny, we're always writing history, but AI moves so fast. You don't really have, you have some books that have come out, but like you don't really have somebody who said like this is, maybe we don't have to go back to the 50s and the first time they used the term AI or artificial intelligence. Maybe we don't even have to necessarily go back to machine learning and 2017, but somebody, and maybe they already have, somebody will put together a great book that sort of stitches it all together and perhaps does make sure credit is given for the people who are involved. Luckily you have resources like ArchiveX, and archive.org, whatever it is, and the research papers there. I think to this day, if I'm not mistaken, Attention Is All You Need is the #1 most cited research paper of all time. I think it's not even close, if I remember right. I could probably double check that, but I think I heard that, which just tells you the importance of like some of those early papers. And then we talk about like the papers that come out of DeepMind and Google X back in the day, and Sakana putting out papers, and then the Jan LeCun's. And I mean, if you did nothing else, you could probably just read archive report, reports and papers and things like that, talking about some new novel concept of diffusion or something like that.
Yeah. By the way, I have a weave off of Archive.
Sure.
There's a startup called AlphaKive, which has just got 7 million in seed funding, which is a small round in the world of AI. But it's co-led by Menlo Ventures and Haystack. Menlo Ventures is a big VC in the Valley. And what they're doing is they're going to set up an AI only or AI focused archive, because archive is the platform onto which these not yet peer reviewed research papers are posted in order for distribution to be available to the rest of the scientists who are working in those areas. And it's not limited to the subject of AI and the research there, but we've been introduced to it, and I use archive extensively now, never reading the papers there, but just putting them into Notebook LM. So Notebook LM can interpret them for me. But now this startup is hoping to take the vast interest in AI centered research and basically create a cutting edge set of AI features on top of that. Imagine Notebook LM and archive together, so you don't have to cut and paste or download the PDF, etc. But AlphaKive will give you all the latest research in this area, and also give you the AI assistant to interpret it along the way. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like a problem that needs to kind of be solved. So now, will it be absorbed by a notebook down the road? You always wonder, where's the moat and things like that. But if they build a really nice site, I could see myself totally using something like that.
And their customer target is actual AI engineers. They want to focus on AI engineers and giving them access to a repository, basically, of the latest research. And if you have an idea like compaction, for example, and you want to make it available in an open source kind of way to other engineers to exploit and include in their advanced AI architectures, then you would publish on AlphaKive. And that's hopefully going to create this. I say hopefully from the perspective of the people who are investing $7 million and the startup founders of this one. The idea that somebody who's already publishing to archive is going to say, okay, well, now I'm going to publish on AlphaKive. I think it's a tough call. I wouldn't personally invest in AlphaKive myself, just based on that. Archive works fine.
So
why
we're
move?
not 7 million in seed funding. Andy was not involved. Hey, this is for both of y'all, and Karl, I think you said, and maybe Andy, you said you had downloaded it yesterday. The it's not Infinity. What's the other part of Gemini, that anti-gravity? Right? Yeah. What it was that builder. I have done a lot in the last 48 hours in Gemini 3 in terms of gems, and I've already talked a lot about that on the show and things I'm discovering, and now I'm teaching other people quickly. And I had some people early on saying thank you for the gem. Yeah. By the way, if you weren't on the show yesterday, I did talk extensively about building gems and a new way of prompting. So go back and watch that episode or listen to it. Also go join our community if you want direct access to the prompt that I used, as well as direct access to that gem. So essentially the first thing I do with AI when there's something new is I build a tool to build more tools. That's always the most efficient way for me. So that's what I started out with. And so it's called the Gem Architect. But in our community, so the Daily AI Show community.com, you can sign up for free and go to Slack. In there, you will see that I shared both the direct link to the gem as well as I pasted the entire prompt in there. So go make it better, share it back with the community. I'm certainly not claiming it's the end all be all. It's what I built early on. I like it. It works really well, but I would love it if people would make it better. Now, that was yesterday's show. Mostly was how I was learning to rewrite prompts yet again for the 16th time in 3 years. Right. But you guys have talked more. I know, Karl, you talked a little bit and you just weren't on the show yesterday, but we were mentioning that you had said it in the Slack channel about anti-gravity. So have you done, or you or Andy, have you guys done any more work with that? Is there anything more to share? Because honestly, I'm in the dark about it. I don't know much.
Yeah, rate limited it. So I'm like, screw that. I'm like, forget this. I'm going back to Cursor or VS Code, and I'm running plots on it, and I'm happy as day, because it's like, if I can't do what I want to do there and I'm rate limited, what's the point? Sure, you could be a super model, but if I can't use you on an ongoing basis, or if it says it's too busy, it's like, what am I doing here? Like, what's the point of this? And maybe it'll get better in compute and so on.
Sure.
I do think though, it's funny because like, remember the windsurf team was literally taken and put into, and that's the team, right? So it's their version of windsurf, right? And there's a lot of neat things that you could do with it. I still think so. Someone wrote a really good post about this on how, and I've been testing and I noticed this. If you want to do nice UI, Gemini is unmatched. But if you try to do complex backend, Codex 5.1 is way better in terms of just logically building it out. So that's where like, hey, if you actually combine the two, it's fantastic, right? So you have like Gemini 3 as your front-end designer, Codex as your back-end. It works like very well to leverage the two. And just
I'm a big fan of mixing models together.
Them
side by side.
Because each model has, to me, has their strengths, and I look at it from the client perspective, like what people are doing. It's unfortunate though that most people can only experience one. Like it's real. I was like, it's so, because if you actually knew how you can take one, do another, like there's so many things that you can mix and match and combine that makes everything just 10x rather than just using one alone. So like, yeah. And that's the thing is like, when I was looking at
you can stitch these things together with N8N, right?
You could stitch these together. Like, for example, people are missing out that like, if you a lot of your work involves social, like extracting information from social in varieties, I would primarily go with Grok. None of the other models can extract as good as Grok can in that type of environment. It just, the way it's trained is that. So if your work involves a lot of public sentiment and looking for that, I was like, forget the other models. I would recommend that. It's superior in that kind of use case. So those are the different things that you need to think about, is like, what are you actually doing, and apply it that way. It's just not everyone, the thinking is, what is one tool to rule them all? And it's like, you can't, because they go so fast. And there's that circle where it's like, okay, Gemini 3, whose turn is it now? This turn, this turn, this turn, this turn. And I still deep inside me, I have a feeling there is an unknown company, I don't know who it is, that may just come out of nowhere and be like, ha, all you guys are fools. Like, and then everyone's like, this is actually the real player. None of these are all, this is the new, I don't know who that was, but like, I still feel there could be an unknown something that comes out of, that rises above all these players. I don't know.
We get surprised frequently by what comes out of China, right? And we don't track them quite as carefully as ours. I want to just say about your gems architect, that I used that this morning. I mentioned this to you before on the show, but I used it this morning to take an existing prompt, and I felt like you had used this commander intent logic that was given you by Gemini 3, and you built that into the structure of the prompt that's in your gem architect, which again, plug, is available at thedailyaishowcommunity.com. Go over there, sign up, be a part of our free Slack, and go and see there in the post-show feedback channel, I think it is, the full prompt to build your own gem architect in Gemini 3. Okay, I used it this morning, and I took an existing, very highly structured prompt and Gemini analyzed that prompt. Your gem architect analyzed that prompt and said, "Hey, this is really well structured." Blah blah. Blah. But I'm going to refashion it so that it's strictly adherent to the XML structures that I work best with. And out came a revised prompt that I can then use to create any number of gems on this model that I gave it. So I was very pleased with the very instant response and the creation of a chain of actions that will allow me to create multiple gems on different topics, whether that's for learning and development inside corporations or whether it's for subject matter expertise on a certain area, including deep research, etc.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? And then I truthfully, I hope somebody in the community is like, Brian, I made the prompt better. This is what you should now have as the gem architect. Like it does this, this, and this now. Great. I hope somebody does do that. I mean, it'd be great to crowdsource this and just come out with a really, really powerful. I think the one I started with is a great start. I love that it basically, as Gemini said, let's add a red teaming feature. But really what it is a sandbox, and it's the fourth step. And it just allows you to actually test sort of live in that same chat. You're keeping your context. You're not having to bounce out to a brand new. I mean, there's a reason, a rhyme or reason to go create the gem and then test it over there, obviously. But if you're just in the build phase and the is this going to work phase or whatever, it's great to be able to have a step that's already built into it that says, look, we need to test this at this point to see if we're getting the intended results out of it. Again, that goes back to a singular prompt in this case, and Gemini's ability to understand the larger goal. And if go back to yesterday's show where I talk about the things that it said, like the 7 steps it felt like it needed for prompting, but that was number 1. That was rule 1, was there must be a singular focus that supersedes everything else. What is the intended goal? And I mean, look, all business processes should start like that. So this is not new, but it was, it's really, really important. And it ends up sitting like an anchor over your gem, and it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And also the thing I'll say is Gemini's thinking, now they don't say 3 thinking anymore. They just say thinking or fast. So even Gemini, when you're in there, it just like it's thinking or fast. And then we know it's 3 behind the scenes, which I love, but their thinking is faster than ChatGPT in a lot of cases. Even their thinking is fast. And when you go back and expand, I mean, it's doing quite a lot of processing, but I do wonder if it's able to do this faster because, as it called out, I'm not looking at 1,000 different documents in my knowledge. It's always in this corpus of do's and don'ts and the guardrails, and that's always one prompt, and it can immediately figure out what the next process is going to be. So even when you're using thinking, it's actually moving pretty fast, and then fast is almost instant. Just really changes things.
One thing that I think is accelerating Gemini's performance also is the tight coordination between Google's infrastructure using their tensor processing units and Gemini, right? They've designed Gemini to work really efficiently on their own hardware, basically. And so that has to be contributing in some way to their success. And I saw something in one of the newsletters today about that, Gemini 3's incredible advances were accomplished by Google without any reliance on NVIDIA, whatever, right? So they have their own platform, and to the degree that Google becomes in some respects preeminent on the product side because of the tight integration it will ultimately achieve with all of the different Google features that you play with, starting in Chrome and into your email inbox and Google Drive, etc. And that, we haven't seen the end of how that surfaces, but that tight coordination is a real advantage in the long run for Google, I think.
I think so too. I agree. And then look, we already talked about it, whatever Apple is doing, but it sounds like, the future of Siri might actually just be, Gemini 3 on the backside of it. Fantastic idea. Whatever that costs, I don't see how that doesn't come back and help Apple tremendously, because it instantly improves the AI across all their Apple intelligence, which is really built on Google intelligence, So there's some fun to think about Android being the the brains behind the AI, but
All right, I have a couple of tiny little news items that we can use to close out.
Let's do it. Let's
One
close
of
it.
them is that Suno, which is a music platform that I've never used. I am musical, but I haven't done that. They got a new $250 million funding round, valuing the company at $2.5 billion. So that's good news. And then the other major player in the world of music is Udio. And Udio just ended up settling the lawsuit that Warner Music Group had hit them with. And so they are now going to be licensing the Warner Music Group catalog for their training purposes, and Udio, and also UMG, which is another music group out there that has a big catalog like Warner Music Group does, is also licensing its catalogs to Udio rather. So anyway, AI music generation. Moving forward, I recently saw a little news blurb that said that the number one recording on the country music pop charts right now is an AI generated music country
right?
music song.
I didn't hear that.
It's funny because the backlash, the straight up vitriol that a lot of creatives have for AI generated anything creative, and to have that as the chart, and it was more of an observation because I'm like, I have a lot of creative friends, so it's like, but it's just interesting to see, the argument that I hear a lot is like, oh, people want real stuff, and I'm like, okay, but if that's the number one, doesn't that prove that there's room for both? Isn't it this like people will, if you create whatever and people like it and they like listening to it, they like watching it and it resonates with them, and for whatever reason, then you have to pay attention to it because it's part, like, yeah, well then people like it, so what do you like? Like, you kind of go where people are and where their likes are, right? It's like, no, people don't like it. It's like, but that kind of proves it. It's kind of number one on the charts, so people are listening.
Listen, I'll end on this, on your exact point, and I've shared this on the screen before. But this isn't the account that I remember, but there's an account that does like AI versions of, or remixes of, either popular, a lot of times it's popular rap songs that, I grew up with. And Coolio's Gangsta Paradise is a classic among classics. And whoever this creator was put this together. Karl, I listened to this song so many times in the car, and I just have a big old goofy grin on my face. I look at my wife, I'm like, right? And she's not a music lover like I am. So it falls like a ton of bricks in the car. It goes nowhere. But when I tell you tomorrow I'm going to be in a long car ride and I'm going to have TikTok hooked up through Apple CarPlay and I'm going to be rocking out to these covers, I'm serious. They're like, and I'll just play you a little clip because I know I've played this before, but it's so good. And I realize people should probably be getting compensated, and I agree with all of that, but it doesn't change the fact of how good this is. So one second, I'll put a little bit.
But I got a look. As they croak, I see myself in the pistol smoke. Fool. I'm the kind of G the little homies wanna be like. On my knees, saying prayers in the street light. They've been spending most their lives living in the gangsta paradise.
I mean, is this better than the original?
Paradise, paradise. They've been spending most their lives living in the gangsta paradise. Where we keep stuff. Paradise. They've been spending most.
Okay. Praise me. Wow, that's good.
It's so good, and there's like 30 tracks that they've done. Some are better than others, but I don't know. I don't know the original creators. That I was trying to find it really quick, but somebody else had shared it on there or whatever. But I love new music. I love original. I love singer-songwriters. I am the guy that'll sit in a bar and listen to the local person play at 3 p.m. when nobody else is in the bar. I love a good singer-songwriter, original songs. I love all of that stuff. but I love this too. This puts a smile on my face. And so I can't really point a finger.
There's room for both. And
that's what I'm saying.
You like it, right? It's what people like. If you create something that people like, if it's AI made or person made, then people like what they like.
But back to the Udio thing, I am all for people getting, if credit needs to be attributed for this to exist, absolutely. Original writers, the lyricists, whatever, absolutely, I'm all for all that. Get your due, but this is also really, really cool, and I love to see the creativity of somebody with these skills. Okay, last thing I'm going to say, Double A Ron is saying he likes the cool remix too. Yeah, I'll try to find a Double A Ron and share it maybe in the community, but there's an account that has like 40 of them, and they look all very similar to this. Some are good, some are okay, some are amazing. Tomorrow's episode 600. I won't be here, but a lot of the other crew will. So come back and hang out with us on a Friday to do that. We have shows all next week. We've already mentioned the community, but go to the dailyiShowCommunity.com because you want that gem that we've just been talking about from yesterday. It's all in there. Plus, you just have a lovely community in there. We have the newsletter that'll go out on Sunday morning. We have a Conundrum episode that goes out every Saturday morning. That's a little bit different. I do a quick live intro, and then you hear 2 AI co-hosts do the rest of it, which is always super fun. Those episodes do well. So that's all the things coming up over the next couple of days. We will be here all 5 days next week. Even if you're, in the States and you're thinking, oh, it's Thanksgiving, we will still have a show. We're not breaking the streak. We've had a 600 show streak where we haven't missed a Monday through Friday. And I think we all secretly want to just keep doing that as long as it's possible. So come back, hang out with us. Even if you have a day off, be around. Now, last thing I have to say is Andy and Karl, unless one of you guys has the end stream button on your screen, I need to go out. You do?
I have the end stream. I don't know what it does. Will it? I don't like. Will it?
It'll play the outro and then close the show.
Are you sure it does? And it won't call. I've seen stuff that I've disappeared and reappeared. So I just want to make sure what I'm doing is correct.
It should work. If it doesn't work, the only thing that I was going to say is I have to literally leave and come back into this and do it. See, this is ridiculous, guys. This is what we're dealing with in the age of it's this bugs in this.
It must be user error. We're doing something wrong.
Well, it's only shown up in the last 2 weeks, so I don't know how it could be us. All right, give it a shot, Karl. Karl's going to hit the button. If we explode, we explode. Let's find out.
It worked. That's amazing.
Now, does it say? Do you see the timer?
I still show live and recording.
We're
so
still live. We're still live. But
so we're doing an after show, is what you're saying?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Hold on. I'll go out and come back in. We'll see if it fixes it.
Okay. In the meantime, I'll give you a preview of what's coming up tomorrow. I'm going to talk about the massive investments that are being made by Saudi Arabia in the wake of the meeting in the Oval Office, and also what's happening in the Middle East with AI.
Okay, I missed that, but are we ready to try it again? I have the end stream now.
Okay, hold on. Are we end streaming again? Like,
yes.
okay, here we go.